Hello, everyone.
Hey guys, welcome into the podcast. On today's podcast, we're going to be doing a companion to our last episode where we talked all about the things that your taken in hand wants you to know. So, in this episode, we're going to be talking on the other side of the coin about things that your head of household wants you to know.
But of course, before we get to that, we want to remind you to hit that like button. It helps us know what you all are enjoying and what episodes we should do more of. And of course, hit that subscribe button because when you do, it makes me smile.
And if you want to support the channel even further, get bonus content, dive deeper into the topic of domestic discipline, the best way to do that is over on Patreon. A link to our Patreon is down below.
So, as Aria was explaining, last time we did kind of a top five, if you will, of what your taken in hand really wants you to know. And so today, as she was saying, we're going to talk about what is it that your head of household really wants you to know. And these are things that may surprise you. Maybe they won't. But I do think that they are important, again, to really cultivating your relationship. If you know these things taken in hands about your head of household, you might find that some of the things that you were worried about or you felt like, again, you were burdening him with, they're just really not there. And head of households, if this is something that you've been thinking about talking to your taken in hand about and you've been afraid to because you thought, well, I don't know if that's going to throw off our dynamic or what the reaction will be, hopefully we'll be able to break the ice easier for you.
And of course, these are just generalizations. This is not going to be applicable to every single couple, but these are a good starting point to start that conversation and think about, are these applicable to you? And if they're not, then what are the things that you really need your taken in hand to know so that you can have that conversation amongst yourselves, because nobody knows you or your relationship like you do.
Absolutely. So the first one that we're going to bring up is that leadership, the head of household leading you, it's not a burden to him. I can tell you that what I didn't realize that I was missing, the part that was frustrating in our relationship before domestic discipline, is I really did want to lead. I wanted that leadership role. I want to take the burden off of my taken in hand and lead her so that she is not worried about every little thing. And I think that was what was happening to you maybe a little bit, Aria, is that before we had started domestic discipline, there were things that you probably didn't even realize, man, I wish this was just off my plate. I don't know why this is causing me so much stress. And then when we started this dynamic, when I was able to take that off of your plate, you felt better, I felt better, and I thought, yeah, this is what I wanted all along, is to lead in these areas.
That's absolutely true for me. And when we were trying to share that role before we kind of understood domestic discipline, kind of came into this relationship style, it was very taxing on me mentally and it was very difficult for me. And so I think that having this relationship dynamic really offered us a solution for that and put us both into our prospective roles in a way that it doesn't feel burdensome. It doesn't feel burdensome to me to give you that leadership, and in turn, it doesn't feel burdensome for you to have the leadership.
Not at all. And that's exactly what I want you to understand, is that this is something that we crave just as men. We want to be the head of the household, again, not in a dictatorship kind of way, but because it helps us know that peace is being kept, that order is being kept, but also that, hey, when it's since it's up to us, we can make sure that harmony is being kept and that our taken in hands are being, in fact, taken care of. And so don't underestimate how much your head of household wants to be the leader, and he does not consider that a burden. So don't try to take that off of him. Don't try to one up him, if you will, or say, okay, I can do this better, or I want to lead. No. You're actually taking a key thing away from him because he wants to be the leader.
And I think that a lot of times taken in hands, because leadership is burdensome to us, that sometimes we don't understand that it's not a burden to our head of household. And so we feel like, gosh, I'm putting everything on him. He must be really burdened by this. And so it's almost like a service, like, oh, I'm going to try to share this burden with him so that he's not stressed out, so that he's not feeling that burden of leadership. And I think that it's an insecurity of ours
Mm.
that you are burdened by leading us. And that is, I think that more often is the motivation of a taken in hand that's trying to take some leadership back. It's not necessarily a power play. It's more of like, gosh, he must be really overwhelmed because I know that when I was doing that, or if I had to do that, I would be overwhelmed. So I want to help him. And it's not a help. It's not a help to try to, it does become a power struggle.
Absolutely.
And it's not a burden to our head of household. So we need to step back and let them fulfill their role.
And you don't realize that when you're taking that away from him, all of the other things that can ensue because of that. And so if you're having this issue right now where your head of household seems maybe a little irritated and you guys are saying, wait a minute, we started domestic discipline, but we're still having these irritations, maybe take a look and see, have you taken any of his leadership away from him? Because he really does want that. And so when you take that away from him, it causes irritation. And again, speaking from experience here. The other thing that may surprise you is that your head of household doesn't look forward to punishing you. Now, we want to be really careful here because I don't want any of you to think, oh, well, so what you're saying is that he doesn't look forward to punishing me because it's an inconvenience, or he doesn't look forward to punish me because he doesn't really want to do it. No, it's from the aspect of he wants you to be better. He knows that by following through with this, it's going to make your dynamic and your relationship better, but he's not taking pleasure in it. It is not something that he looks forward to or is excited about doing, but he's also, it's not an inconvenience to him, but he knows it's for your benefit. So but he doesn't look forward to actually doing that.
It's more or less the fact that a head of household isn't looking for reasons or opportunities to punish you.
Exactly.
He's not nitpicking. He's not like looking at you and under a microscope and trying to figure out what he can punish you for that day. It's more of that he understands the necessity of punishment to get the outcome. And he is using punishment as a tool in the relationship because it works, because that is within his authority. And he doesn't shy away from using punishment. He's more than willing to punish you when you deserve it. But it's not something that he is going to try to find reasons to punish you, because that's not the focus of the relationship. That's not the focus of his role.
I like how you just brought up that he doesn't have you under a microscope. There is never a point where I am waiting for Arya to mess up, that I'm just trying to find any little thing wrong so that I can punish her. That's never the thing that I want to do. I never want to be that way, and I'm not that way. And so just know that if you have felt that way, that is really not what your head of household is doing. If you've thought that, I guarantee you, if you were to ask him, hey, I've really felt like maybe you're just trying to find things wrong, he'd say, absolutely not. I just want you to be the very best that you can be. But really, if you think about it, he's not trying to be the person to hold you to an unfair standard and trying to find something wrong with every little thing.
And even if you have a very strict head of household, I think that if you are being objective, if you are in a clear state of mind, you can really see that their expectations are reasonable, they are realistic, and they're not trying to set you up for failure. They're not trying to set unreasonable, unrealistic expectations so that they can find fault, because that's very spirit crushing.
Absolutely.
And that is not what his role is. His role is to really uplift you, build you up, make you better. And punishment is part of that process. Nitpicking in a way that just sets unrealistic expectations, that is just damaging to the relationship. And we each have our roles to build up our relationships.
And this next point kind of rolls into this point that we just made, which is that head of households want to hold you accountable. They, in fact, do. They want you to be better. One of the things that Aria and I talked a lot about, and still do, but talked a lot about at the beginning of our relationship, is that it was not burdensome for me to hold her accountable. I want her to feel as though I do expect more of her because I know it's in her. And so I want to do everything that I possibly can to hold her accountable to the rules, hold her accountable to our pillars, hold her accountable to all of the things in domestic discipline so that she can become the best person that she can be, the best wife that she wants to be, the best mother that she wants to be. And so I don't know if this one will surprise you at all, take it in hands, but he in fact does want to hold you accountable to things. It's not something that, again, is a burden to him, and it's something that he really wants to do because he cares about you.
Now, I will say that part of this is that if you're at the very beginning of your relationship, accountability, holding accountability might feel burdensome because it's unfamiliar and you have to build habits around this. Part of the thing that we do to make sure that we have the time and space to hold that accountability is to have a nightly check-in. And then that way, Coda can ask all the questions that he needs to ask. He can check all the things that he needs to check. We've built that time into our schedule to where if accountability, if punishment or correction needs to happen, that we have the time to take care of that. But building that into our schedule and that becoming routine took some time, and it takes some time to kind of shift your whole mindset around leading and holding accountability and making sure that you're checking in and making sure that you're paying attention to the standards that you've set. And so it might feel burdensome for a while, but as you get into routine, it becomes kind of a way of life, a way that you interact, and the way that you function as a couple.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so, as Ari was saying, if you're in the very beginning of your relationship, don't rush this process, but realize that even in the infancy of your relationship, that your head of household really wants to help you achieve the goal for your relationship and the goal for yourself. He really wants that for you because one of the misconceptions I think that's out there in the domestic discipline relationship is, again, that it's all about him and it has nothing to do with her. No, a good head of household will be the first one to tell you that that is the beauty of this relationship, is that the whole reason this is structured the way it is because he cares what she becomes. Mm-hmm. And that's why he does, in fact, care about holding her accountable. Now, this one may also surprise you. I don't know. But as a head of household, we need and we long for that obedience and submission. Why? Well, is it because we're egomaniacs? Well, no, of course not. But the reason we long for the obedience and submission from you is because we, number one, want to have peace in our household. We want peace in our relationship. And so without the obedience, without the submission, we can't have that outcome. But second of all, we want that for the relationship. Nobody wants to be in a relationship where there's conflict all the time. In fact, many of you chose domestic discipline because you were saying that's all we were doing, was getting in little fights about little things and having conflict. And so to have obedience and submission, for me, that equals peace and harmony and ultimately love between the two people. And so does he long for that? You bet he does, because he desires for you to be closer and to have a good, fulfilling relationship that you both can cherish.
I recently did a video where I talked about how obedience and respect, which part of respect is submitting to your head of household's authority, how that really does communicate love.
Hmm.
And it really does build the relationship in a positive way. It creates peace and order in the home. And so, really, why do our head of households need this from us? Well, first of all, it's an expression of who we are in the relationship,
Mm.
it's an expression of our love, and it helps them to know that their authority in the home is being honored. And it also affirms their role in the home. Because if you can say you're a leader, but if nobody's listening to you, then really, what authority do you have? What leadership do you have? So, if we want to affirm and build our head of households up as the leader, as the authority in the home, as the head of household, we have to give them our obedience and our submission to affirm that within them, and also to build our relationships and to make it to where it is easier and less burdensome for them to lead, for them to hold accountability, for them to follow through with punishments when it's necessary. Because if we are always going against their authority, when we're not being obedient, when we're not giving that submission to them, it makes their job 10 times harder.
And you brought up a good point there. For men, for us, love is communicated in respect, and that's exactly what Arya was just talking about. And so when you're obedient and you give that submission, you're showing respect, and that respect really translates to us like, wow, my taken in hand, my wife, she really loves me because she is really trying hard to be obedient and submissive, therefore showing that she respects me, that she respects me as her spouse, respects me as a human being, and is showing that she loves me enough to want to do things the way that she knows is beneficial to our relationship. And that's one reason why we long for the obedience and submission so much, is we want to feel loved, and we feel loved by when you do that, and that shows the respect for us. The final thing that we want to talk about is holding the authority for us is very, very fulfilling. Uh, this may not come as a shock, but men really do thrive in authority positions. That's just the way we're wired. We long to lead. We long to lead because we want to make things better. We want to make things better for everybody around us. And so by holding this authority in the domestic discipline relationship, it fulfills a lot of things for us. I can tell you what it fulfills for me is something that I didn't even know I was missing till we started it. I was trying to find my fulfillment really as a person in my job, in my career, in a status. And part of that was because my relationship with Arya was lacking. And so as we started down this road of domestic discipline, and we've gotten better and better and better at it, and I've been holding this authority, and she again has been submitting to me, all of a sudden it's like, wow, I have my identity in the things that really matter, in being her husband, in being, again, her head of household, and being a father, and being a family man, which I think should be the priority for all of us anyway, the very, very first priority. It's not bad to necessarily find your fulfillment in those other things, but why is it so hard to have the ultimate fulfillment, have this be the number one thing? If all of that disappeared tomorrow and this is all that remains, would you still be fulfilled? And the answer should be yes. And it's because that we long to fulfill the authority here. And when you're allowing us to do that, when you're allowing us to be the authority and lead in the proper ways that we've already mentioned, we get that fulfillment, and it makes us better men. It makes us better head of households.
I think that this is another thing that's really hard for Taken in Hand to understand. Because if we held authority, it would weigh us down. It would not
Mm,
feel natural.
mm,
It would feel like a task or a responsibility, and it's not that we don't hold responsibility as Taken in Hands. I have a responsibility to submit. I have a responsibility to meet expectations and fulfill my role. But the responsibility of authority is just something that is so beyond my purview that it's hard for me to understand how that is fulfilling, but it really is. And I think that, again, sometimes as Taken in Hands, we get too much into our heads thinking that gosh, he holds all the authority, and that must just be like this huge mental load. He must really be thinking about it all the time, and I'm such a burden, and these standards and expectations are such a burden to him, and he's just having to manage me and manage our house and manage all of these things. That must just really weigh him down, and I'm not going to ask for that correction. I'm not going to ask for, accountability. I'm not going to come to him with, this struggle that I'm having because he has so much on his mind. Our head of household, that's where they thrive. They want to give us what we need, and they want to hold that authority. They want us to come to them and say, I'm really struggling here. Can you hold accountability?
Absolutely.
Or I'm really having some emotional overwhelm, or I'm feeling very tempted to, do something that I know goes against the standards that you've set. Maybe I'm tempted to lose my temper and I really could use a correction so that I can kind of refocus back into my role. They want us to come to them with that because that affirms their authority. And the more we affirm their authority, the more fulfilled they are in the relationship. And the more being in domestic discipline, holding that head of household role, the more fulfilled they feel in the relationship, and it makes it all worth it.
He wants to be in charge. He wants that. He's saying, yes, put that on me. I want to take care of it because I'll sleep well at night knowing I have the authority over it. That's where I really thrive and can be the best that I can be. And so you see why this dynamic works. This is one reason that we started domestic discipline, is because Aria wanted to offload things that were just cluttering her mind and were causing her a lot of grief. And I really wanted to take that responsibility. We didn't realize that right away at the time, but as we've gone through this, we've realized that's really what we both needed from our relationship, and that's why we've thrived in it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us for this. I hope that this gave you something to think about, gave you some talking points. I hope that it at least got you thinking about what are the things that you really connect with and what do you need your taken in hand to know so that you guys can have a better perspective of where you're each coming from so that you know what is fulfilling to you in your relationship. And hopefully this can help you kind of talk through those things because I think it's important.
Absolutely.
I think it's important to know kind of where your head of household's coming from and again, where your taken in hand is coming from so that you know how this relationship serves both of you. And I know that I felt in the past, I have felt guilty about asking for accountability or asking for correction or asking for more strict boundaries. And I realized as we've talked about this that you really thrive on that authority and that leadership. And so I don't have to feel bad about those things. So I hope that this conversation helped you get some perspective in that way as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks again for joining us. And we hope that this was helpful to you and to your relationship.
Bye.